Hey, it's Chukuma Space and Equity. We're all about increasing assets and creating new space. Here today with Tosin Durotoye. Thank you, Tosin, for gracing us with your presence. I'm going to give a little bit of a background, and hopefully I do it justice. First of all, Tosin and I met at Wake Forest University back in 2000. Had her father for 4 or 5 classes, mowed his yard. Tosin is a political, that's how Nigerians do. She's a political science undergrad major, also had a focus on international studies. She then, after school, spent some time doing urban planning, somehow found herself woven into tech because she worked with some old white dudes who didn't know how to do anything but fax messages, and then expanded all the way into Bloom Africa, which she's the founder of, which is a incubator for women in tech, because there's definitely an opportunity there and still continues to be an opportunity on the globe, but specifically in Africa. She's had worn various hats, including working as an executive at Delta on their innovation team. Some of you guys may not know, but everybody that is Nigerian flies Delta. And as a result, Delta is the largest airline in the world. So there's a lot of initiatives that they're engaged in, and Tosin is a part of that. So Tosin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to add to that intro just with some interesting clarification. So definitely thank you again, Obi, for bringing me on. It's a pleasure to be here to speak with you. And I did go to undergrad at Wake where we met, definitely did political science, which was my father's focus area. So that was very interesting. I took him one time during the summer when I felt like nobody would see that I
Uh-huh.
was taking my dad's class. And that was a very interesting experience. He gave me a C on my first paper.
What?
And then when my mom tried to intervene to say, why would you do that? Because I was so upset, he told her to tell me to set up a meeting to discuss how I could improve my grade in his class. And so I always tell that story. It's one of my favorite ones. And so I definitely had to send him an email as though I didn't see him for dinner the previous day to say, Dr. Durotoye, can I please set up a meeting with you to discuss my grade in your class? And then he responded with his availability. And then I was able to go and have a meeting with him. So did that. And like you said, did urban planning at NYU, Public School of Service, the Wagner Public School of Service, specifically focusing on housing, economic, and community development. And that was just an amazing time for me. It really allowed me to hone in on what I call my purpose, which is about impact and driving change in communities. And so did that for over 10 years, then went over to Nigeria, where I then at that point had a job in tech. As you mentioned, I was at this other company where, at that time, being a millennial meant you were the youngest in the room, not so much now. But at that time, I had some pretty, what I thought were basic ideas, such as let's go to EFAX. And they thought it was so amazing. And then I kind of got thrown into this tech water of, well, do you want to build stuff? Do you want to fix anything else around here? Why don't you wear that hat? And
Mhm.
that's how I started working with the developers at the company. And I realized I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole process, user requirements, user acceptance tests, all of those things just made me feel like I was doing something really impactful on behalf of the company. And so I stuck with that, then ended up joining a startup and moved over to Nigeria because before COVID, this startup said I could work from anywhere. And so I chose to go back to Nigeria because I was curious
Mhm.
about what was happening back home, a country that I had not lived in since I was a child. And so I did that. And I continued to work in that space while I was in Nigeria. I took some time away from the US, meaning that I actually resigned that job so I could focus specifically on the things that were happening in Nigeria at the time. And I came in at a very interesting time, which was during sort of what I would call the emergence of the startup ecosystem. I think around that time, 2016, 2017, we did have tech companies, but there was just this wave that sort of came upon us in Nigeria where there was such a huge focus on it. Until today, we are the leading tech ecosystem on the continent, alongside countries like Kenya and Egypt and South Africa, and so on and so forth. And so while I was there, I led the establishment of the first female-focused tech accelerator program, and the first powered by Google program on the continent. And that was called Greenhouse Labs. And it was a very amazing experience. I got the opportunity to really kind of roll up my sleeves and create something that would support women in tech. And alongside that, I also launched my NGO, which is the Bloom Africa. And the NGO actually focuses on women and girls. And we do a number of initiatives within the Bloom Africa. So not just limited to helping support women with tech training, but also leadership training, also giving them access to things around like mental health, care, just really trying to provide holistic support for women and girls. Because I just noticed when I got there that particular, like my gender, really and truly has a difficult time in that country in all aspects. And so thinking about what I could do to help, and that's sort of what I came up with. And so founded that in 2019. And I'm bringing that over to the US, currently in the process of registering it as a 501c3.
Awesome.
And my hope is to use that as a bridge to connect the diaspora back to Nigeria, because I'm bringing in experience where I can say, I know which partners are doing the work. I know which partners we can commit to financially, or you can donate to, that you can help to drive the development of women and girls. And I think folks in the diaspora need that, because they may want to help, but a lot of times they don't know how to help, and so, or support. And so I think for me, being able to sort of establish the Bloom Africa here stateside is a step in that direction of trying to bring a bridge between us and our countries, and moving that forward. And so that's sort of my story. Somewhere in between that, I ended up consulting for Microsoft, working to support the startups in West Africa. Also worked in prop tech for a while, working in a real estate company where I helped to push forward the establishment of their tech-focused subsidiary, which was really primarily focused around how do we build technology to support the real estate and facilities management industry. And so overall, I've had a great time. And now I'm back stateside, working with Delta Airlines, where I work as an innovation strategist, looking at specifically our activities and our efforts on board. So my team is called Onboard Services or In-Flight Services. And so we look at just everything that has to do with what's happening while you are on the flight. And so I'm specifically looking at technologies that we can use to better manage consumption, which would help us to reduce fuel costs, which will help us to reduce carbon emissions, and so on and so forth. So it's a new space for me, aviation is, but the thing I love about technology is that it allows you to really spread your wings and try your hands at so many different spaces, as long as you have that mindset of innovation or whatever it is that your specific focus is within technology. So that is my intro compared to Obi's, a little bit more detailed, but
A little bit more detail. So based on what I hear, Tosin has receipts. First off, I love to have people on the show that have accomplishments, not just for the sake of bragging, but for the sake of what you've described and what you share on all your platforms is a desire to have impact. And then take that further is that to have enough imagination and courage to pursue that impact and allow you to flourish the way you have. I'm excited because my 10-year-old daughter is sitting hearing all this like, wow, I can do all those things.
Hi, darling. I am
So
obsessed with this
Amara
girl.
Chukwu's in here, and Amara is very talented and doesn't want to be stuck in a box and just do one thing. So to hear somebody live it out is exciting for me.
Oh, wow. She can do anything she wants. I tell all my girls that. So I hope she believes that, because it's true. So yeah,
You
definitely.
help solidify that. That's amazing. I was listening to, well, you know how when you get ready for, I like to be prepared when I set up these. So even in preparation, there's things you can learn. But you mentioned in 2016 that Trump's inauguration to the U.S. president was an opportunity to pivot. And so you're like, hey, why not go back home? The job afforded, I would say you afforded yourself the opportunity to work remotely, to work in Nigeria. And as a diasporan, what does it mean? What does home mean? Because I've lived in the US. I'm 42 years old. 40 years of my life have been in the United States. I'm a US citizen, but I also carry an ECOWAS passport. And I would consider home Nigeria. What does
Mm-hmm.
home mean, and why do people have that desire to be connected to home, even if you're far removed?
It's a question of identity. The question you ask is a very, very complex and layered one, I think, at least in my experience, that's what I've found. But similar to you, when people ask me where I'm from, the first thing that comes out of my mouth is Nigeria, even though just like you, I am a US citizen as well, naturalized. So been here since I was about 8 years old. Also had a previous tour when I was, I think, about five, and we stayed for 2 years and I came back. So this is like my third go around with coming back to the US, and so I always feel as though I belong to both places. But in terms of my core identity, I know that rests in Nigeria. And I think that I give a lot of credit to my parents for that because growing up, one thing about African parents, anyway, most of them that I know, they don't let you forget
Mhm.
where you come from. You're going to eat the foods, you're going to hear the language, you're going to speak the language like I do. You're going to, meet your relatives, all these things. And so being Nigeria was just always part of my core identity. And so it was never difficult for me to sort of be able to identify in that way. But I will say that the interesting thing, though, about sort of my experience along the way as well is that moving back home when I did as an adult 4 years ago was an interesting experience because moving back there's nothing that puts into sharp focus that maybe you are a bit different, in the way that you think, in
Mhm.
the way that you approach certain things, and the things that maybe you have been exposed to that others haven't been, but definitely felt this sense of, okay, I'm Nigerian, but I'm also coming in with this sort of American experience, and parts of my mind are very Americanized in the way that I think and approach certain things. And so it kind of leads to the question of, okay, so, I'm Nigerian, but maybe I'm not Nigerian enough. But then I also don't feel like I belong in America 100%, even though I grew up here, I still feel sort of that immigrant identity. And so along the way, I'll be honest with you, I sort of identify myself more as a global citizen at this point, where I feel as though I belong in so many different places, but maybe not one singular place.
Absolutely. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think there used to be, I know for me personally, there was an identity crisis because
Mm,
when I went home, the times I went home, I was an American to
yeah,
Nigerians.
exactly.
I was
Exactly.
American to my family. I was
Mhm.
American to those that have not left Nigeria.
That's right. That's right.
And I used to think that was a deficit. And I
Mm,
don't necessarily believe that. When people ask me where I'm from, I always start with, well, I'm Nigerian. I was born in Nigeria. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. That is part of my identity. I'm a Buckeyes fan because I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I spent 10 years in North Carolina, and I can't remove that. And I
mm,
think part of it adds to the story. And somebody would people like to otherize us in any capacity they have an opportunity to do so. Um, but why not have that American experience, have that global citizen experience, and then say, okay, I want to have impact there, and I want to have impact here as well. I
that's
love,
exactly right.
you know, I love my country. I love the United States. That's part of a lot of the opportunities that exist in my life happened because I lived here.
That's right.
Um, and nobody should be able to tell us that we can't do both. We can walk and chew gum. You can.
Listen, absolutely. And, I think for a really long time, I used to sort of struggle with it, just being, like, what, why do I feel like I don't belong 100%? But what I realize now that it's actually a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to occupy both spaces. It's a blessing, really, to be able to cross over between both spaces. Because I think number one, there's opportunities depending on what season of your life you're in, where either place might be a better fit. And so when I moved to, Nigeria, I think you made the comment about how, Trump's election sort of inspired me. That's how I say it anyway, that it's inspired me to move back home. But that was the perfect place for me to be during those 4 years, because I felt grounded, in Nigeria. I felt safe. I felt protected. I felt that I could be Black in peace, and that was just what my country was able to give me at that moment. And then there are other times when maybe I have a particular career goal in mind or certain things that I want to achieve. And I feel like, okay, America would give me more access to that than Nigeria would in this season. And so then just having that opportunity and that ability to go back and forth like that, to me, every day now I see it more as a blessing, to say that that's something that I can do. And so that's how I choose to look at it. Just like you said, is more of a blessing. So absolutely.
Our home country, before we transition, is 62 years old. That's a relatively short lifetime for a nation. And there's a lot of opportunity. Nigeria finds itself typically the highest GDP in the continent of Africa. It continues to propel itself amongst all the countries. I think it's in the top 30, and as we project out, we'll probably be in the top 20 over the next 5 years. However, that doesn't necessarily translate into infrastructure that we control. We've got elections coming up. I think Obasanjo is running, and he's about 150 years old. You have
He's
people.
not running.
He's not running.
No,
Okay, I
he's
thought
not
I thought he
running.
was. I thought he was running
No,
again.
he's not running.
Where do you see? How do the younger people in Nigeria take the reins of the country? How does that happen? Does that happen? Is that
That's a good question. That's a really good question. And I think it's one that the young people themselves are still trying to figure out. I think that, this is the politics and democracy looks different in every country. There is a way it looks in the West versus how it looks, in the global South, which, includes countries within Africa. And when you look at the case of Nigeria, it's a very unique country in terms of our history and our political sort of journey that we've taken. Like you pointed out, we're a relatively new democracy in many ways. And because of that, there has just been, I think a lot of just mistakes and just false starts and disappointments have happened along the way. And around 2020, when Black Lives Matter kind of exploded because of the death and the murder of George Floyd, it was interesting because on a parallel sort of wavelength, Nigeria was also experiencing something similar called End SARS, which was a protest against our own police who also brutalized, uh, I would say, folks in certain areas of Nigeria. Folks were also being killed by these really aggressive police officers that had guns. And the youth stood up and they protested for a long time. I was there myself. I attended at least 3 of those protests. And it went on for a few weeks, and then it culminated with there being a shootout near sort of what I would call the focal point of the protest, which was what we call the Lekki toll gate. It's a toll gate area that leads into the Lekki sort of community on Lagos Island. And so there was, they brought in military and they started shooting, and a number of youth died right there. And it was really shocking and traumatizing, actually, because I wasn't too far away. I could hear the gunshots and all of those things. And so I share this because that was a moment in time when I felt so proud of the youth in Nigeria, because of our past and how sort of oppressive our governments have been. We've been under dictatorships for many years. And, this present day president that we have as of now was democratically elected. And so will be the next one, however you define democratically elected. But the point is, it's not going to be a coup. It
Yeah.
wasn't a military takeover. These are, folks that are, you know, uh, supposedly voted in anyway. So it's a democratic process. And so the youth have, and not just the youth, but just the populace in general has been so oppressed because of this history of dictatorships
Mhm.
and military takeovers, that oftentimes you just don't see that sort of will to fight back or to stand up for themselves, because after a while you just kind of give in to what your fate is. But in 2020, I saw that happen. I saw the youth stand up. Obviously, social media helped to kind of power that. And so NSAR's hashtag was everywhere. The youth were in the streets. We were outside. We were protesting. And then that thing happened, where, and it was not a thing, it was a tragedy. It was horrible, where they killed all of these people. Until today, it's something that's denied. They said it never happened. And so, to answer your question, I think after that, the youth were definitely discouraged. They stepped down, they stepped back, which was obviously the intention of what had happened at the toll gate, was to kind of quiet them and silence them. And it worked. It worked, and people went back home. They were terrified. No one wants to get killed. And they continued, I think, on social media platforms. We continue to have these conversations, but we didn't see the change that we were looking for. And so I think for the youth, it's an uphill battle. And it sort of, again, reminds me of similarly the same challenges we have here in America, where it's not like we've given up, but we have moments when we really feel like we're about to make a breakthrough, be it Black Lives Matter, where everyone was out, and you're really pushing and you're out there, you're doing everything using your social media platform, attending protests, having conversations, pressuring your lawmakers. And then a few months later, someone else is shot and killed by the cops. And you're just like, and you're deflated again. And so I think that's sort of where the youth are right now, is sort of, we feel, and I'm going to speak as a Nigerian here, we feel that, yes, we can make change. Yes, we have a voice. And right now there is a number, I think that right now the youth are very actively engaging in the voting, like I was saying. So I think that it was something where a lot of the youth right now just feel like, okay, we'll go out, we'll vote, but they already feel like, what's going to happen is going to happen. Some of them are definitely still very optimistic. They are right now behind a president. Most of them, from what I've gleaned, are behind a presidential candidate called Peter Obi, who they feel, yes, exactly, who they believe it has Nigeria's best interests in mind, would better serve us moving forward, but I don't know what's going to happen. I have a pretty strong guess. I don't think Peter Obi is going to win, but I hope that doesn't continue to discourage the youth. I hope that they continue to sort of press forward. And what I would pray for and hope for, even though it seems like such a long ways away, is that one day we'll have more youth engaging in the political process. So, running for office, taking up seats on the local government sort of level, because a lot of changes, just like America, a lot happens on the local government level, but everyone is always looking at sort of the presidential election as what's most important, whereas that's not necessarily true. And so I think, again, our our challenges are very similar in many ways to those of the youth in Nigeria, and just that we continue to press forward, we continue to face disappointments, and
Yeah.
continue to hope for the best moving forward.
I think part of that, the help is coordinated efforts. Oftentimes, and this is strategic on those in power, is that Black people on the planet are promoted to individual feats. Like that's a great Black person, whether it's Oprah or it's Michael Jordan or LeBron James, rather than working collectively to make change. So when the youth come collectively, let's shut that down in this capacity. Um, I I think the opportunity for us is not to be discouraged in spite of that, because it's almost that it's formulaic. And whether, like you indicated, Peter Obi is something that somebody that the youth is behind, and you can see how the state of Anambra has thrived under his leadership. And and it's so hard to say from outside. I'm 5,000 miles away. I just read about things here and listen to a few things. But if one can take that momentum, whether or not he becomes president, and say, all right, well, we didn't get it at the presidential house, but what can we do at the local state level, at the local government level, and continue to go forward? I think that's where there's opportunity. One of the reasons why we're here is our event, Field of the Boardroom. Field of the Boardroom was born out of just being tired of seeing us thrive individually. And we do all the time. Like it's like I have Tosin on, and she has all these accolades, has continued to have success, but it would be foolish of me to not then say that I've had Courtney, who's your sister, a sorority, and she's a very accomplished attorney, has all these connections in Texas, and then I have two daughters. And these individuals, whether my daughter wants to go, my oldest wants to go into law, my youngest is an entrepreneur. If I never made those connections, it'd be nonsensical. That's what we do all the time.
Yeah.
So with the FTBR, it's like, okay, how do we help young people know what people resources exist? Because a lot of these things happen in networks. You've talked about on some of the other platforms you've spoken to, is that the reason we keep on getting the same recycled tech ideas is that you end up having to type, oh, so-and-so did it like this is how Stripe did it. So you want to get the same individuals, the same prototype, if you will, that you're going to put private equity money into, and oftentimes that's led by men, in most cases led by white men, and then we wonder why the cycle never gets disrupted. Well, part of that disruption is that building our own networks. Like if my house is broken, my house has plumbing issues, I probably have the most at stake to make sure that house is fixed. So it would be nice to get a good plumber to come out, but I have to drive that initiative. So at Field of the Boardroom, we said, why don't we put together all these extremely talented people that we have relationship with, that desire to have impact, specifically in the tech space, which Tosin, you are a part of, and then say to the young people, to the Maras of the world, that, hey, when you want to do this, Tosin already has
call me. Yeah.
He already has a system in place. Don't create it from scratch. We've been told to create from scratch all the time when we have all these resources.
That's right.
And so you connecting people in the diaspora, this is how you can help. This is how you benefit yourself. I want to be in a situation where we never have to ask, who can I go to for that particular task? And that's the genesis behind Field of the Boardroom. We have pushed that to October so that we continue to do it in excellence. I just found out, Tosin, that when you start something like a Scooter's Coffee, it might be take a little bit of your time. So maybe we should put focus here and then put the focus on what we need to make that thrive. You talked about the city planning, and that really is the foundation of your adult professional life. How do you see all the dots connected? because you're doing things in the Northeast in Boston, then you're in Nigeria in the middle. How are right now you're working at Delta? How do all the dots connect so that it's a continuous story building, whether you want to call it an enterprise, building a true foundation of impact? What does that look like for you when you reflect on what's happened and where you're going?
Yeah. So I always talk to whenever because through my NGO, I've had the opportunity to mentor. I have 31 mentees that I have. Um, they've gone through my leadership program since 2019. I've had retreats for women. I've had a lot of time to talk about this thing. And what I always share is that there is something called purpose. And purpose, there's this Japanese concept called ikigai, which is essentially loosely translated means, you know, your purpose, your reason for being. And so at the center of my purpose is always impact,
Mm-hmm.
impact. That's it. How do I make impact in the world where I am with what I have? And that's what I've been doing for a long time. And so for me, all of these things are connected. Now, there's a difference between purpose and passion.
Hmm.
Passion can evolve. You might one day be interested in, oh, I don't know, cooking and baking bread. And then maybe 2 years from now, you're interested in vintage cars. So passion is forever evolving. It's more about just like following your curiosities and things you're
Right.
interested in. And so I always say passion can be part of your purpose, but purpose doesn't have to exist in your passion. And so for me, travel is my passion. It's my hobby. I love to travel so much. I am on my, I believe, 60th country. And so that's something I've obviously spent a lot of time doing. And so working at Delta Airlines is me, it's an expression of my passion. And I think that's necessary. And so this is actually kind of like the first time that I've done something career related that just has to do with just my passion. It's not, it's not purpose driven. But on the purpose side, when we think about impact, as a city planner, impact was made because I was working in low to moderate income communities. We were bringing in new grocery stores. We were redeveloping libraries. We were fixing road networks. You were fixing neighborhoods and you were talking to community leaders. And like I said earlier, bringing to the forefront what it is that they needed to thrive, and then working as sort of a liaison between them and the government to ensure that their voices are heard. So felt the impact there. When I worked at NeighborWorks America, I was looking specifically around affordable housing issues. Again, impact work. When I went to the startup, we were still working on affordable housing, but now we had built a platform, pretty much an Edutech platform that would help people better understand what they were getting into so that we could avoid the foreclosure crisis that we had how many years ago. And so it was an educational platform where you had to go through a series of courses in order to qualify for a certain type of mortgage from Fannie Mae at that time. And so again, felt impact work there. And like I said, all my work in Nigeria, be it through Greenhouse Lab, be it through working with the startup ecosystem to support them and give them access to all types of resources, again, impact-led work. And so for me, anything that I involve myself with, the question I always ask myself is, am I making an impact? Am I touching or helping to change people's lives? And as long as that thread is present there, then I feel fulfilled, right? And so for me, I feel like a lot of the work that I've done has been an expression of that purpose, which is just being impact driven. And then, like I said, now, I'm having fun with this 9 to 5 that I have, which is around travel. So I just get to think about travel all day long. And that's more of my passion. So I feel really blessed and lucky that I can both exercise my purpose as well as my passion at the same time. And yeah, so that's how I would describe that.
That's awesome. We always on this podcast, music is woven into, because I think music is a big component of everybody's life and the passion they have. If you had to choose an artist to describe your what makes you Tosin, who would that artist be and why?
Wow, an artist that describes.
It embodies you.
Hmm. So I love Shade Adu. I am a huge fan. I am patiently waiting. I heard she's going back into the studio. I got so excited because one of the things is that I've never seen her perform live. And it is like, I would say, probably number one on my bucket list at this point because I feel like I've traveled to a lot of the places that I wanted to travel. And so now, honestly, my bucket list is I just need to see Sade in concert. And the reason why she's a muse to me is because I just admire how she goes about and how she has gone about her entire musical career. It goes back to what I was saying, which is that for her, her music is an expression of purpose. It's not something that she does for the money. It's not something that she does for fame. Sade will disappear for 10 years and no one will know where she's at. She will not give interviews. She doesn't, you won't see her just the paparazzi doesn't have access to her. She's not out there like that. And I've read so many interviews that she's done and she just always talks about how she only brings out music when she has something to say, you
Wow.
know? And so she's not someone who is frivolous with her gift or her talent. She's very intentional about how she does this. And that's why people like me have to wait years and years just to have her back on stage because she's not going to come back until she feels like she has something to give. And I just think that's a really beautiful thing. And that's sort of how I like, or I would like to lead my life is to be very intentional in how I use my time, my gifts, my talents, my resources, so that it's not about, you know, what makes me look good or what can I get from it or how much money can I make, but more about, you know, when I have something good to offer, I'm able to do that in a way that makes that impact. And so that's why I would definitely choose Sade for that.
Well, you killed that. I didn't even give you a heads up on that question, and you destroyed it. I love it. I love it. And I'm smiling because I don't even think, as a kid, I did not know Sade was Nigerian.
Oh yeah.
So when I found that out, I was like, oh
Yeah, she
yeah.
is. She's
That's like
definitely
my crush. That maybe it makes it more sense to me.
exactly. Exactly.
Tosin, we're so delighted to have you on the show. We truly, so first of all, space and equity, talk about increasing assets and creating new space, not for the sake of being rich, but for being wealthy. And really, it's a freedom play. I think for you to control or have freedom in how you move, to maximize your creativity, you have to have means to not be controlled by a 9 to 5. So we started with that premise is that as you're building somebody else's empire, you should be working on building your own empire.
Yeah.
And then that expanded to Field of the Boardroom. And it's our passion project because we believe that your network has a direct impact on your net worth. And then it allows you to be the most self-actualized individual. So you're going to join us in October 6th through the 9th in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's called Field of the Boardroom 2, our tech series, our Black tech series. You're heavily involved in the tech space as we've described throughout this episode. But what I want you to do to close us out is tell us if you wanted people to get in contact with you. You might have a Sade moment where like, leave me alone. If you wanted people to get in contact with you, how would they go about doing that? How do they find Tosin?
Love, you can definitely, I love LinkedIn, so you can reach me on LinkedIn. My Instagram as well, and both of those are just my name, Tosin Durotoye. So you can find me in that way for sure. And yeah, drop me a note, reach out, and I'll definitely do my best to respond in a timely manner. But yeah, this has been a great opportunity. Thank you so much, Obi, for the chance to just speak with you about the work that I do, my purpose, my passions. And I'm definitely looking forward to our time talking with people about this in October. So
Awesome.
thank you.
Thank you, Tosin. Thank you. And Tosin is being humble, but her receipts are real. My goal is if the person is impressive to me, we get them on the show. And being impressive to me, I have a high standard and you far exceed that standard. I'm so thankful for your time. As Tosin shared that we will be in Charlotte, North Carolina, October 6th through the 9th, which is some people know it as Indigenous Peoples Holiday or Columbus.
That's the day that I know it as, and
That's how we know it as,
that's
because
how it's gonna be.
it just so happens he did not discover America. Just in case you didn't know,
No,
it so happens that
not
there were people here. There were
already.
Africans here thousands of years before. So just with that, we're going to be at the JW Marriott. You can find all this information on our website at spaceequitycorp.com. There's a link to FTBR2. The information right now shares that we're doing it the February 17th to the 19th. We are changing the date so that we come correct with excellence. We want to do everything in order. Our goal is to have more than 200 students in the North Carolina area that are in the tech space, transitioning as entrepreneurs or transitioning for a job in corporate America, and give access to professionals like Tosin Durotoye, like Dr. Onya Jackaway, who works at 23andMe, and like other entrepreneurs in that space, Ron Smith, or individuals that work at NASA. We want to give these kids the resources, the people resources they need to navigate and to thrive in the space that we have. We've learned from experience that you have to be the best in the room. You can be the best in the room, but what's even more important is knowing the people that can that can sponsor you to the next stage in your life. So we believe when you come correct, they can't stop you. And Tosin, we thank you for always coming correct. We thank you for joining us on our show.
Thank you so much, Obi. It's been a blast. Thank you.
All right. You have a great day.
All right. See you soon. October. Well,
October.
enough. We'll be here before you know it. All
Absolutely.
right. Okay, Obi.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.